My wife has been
Hank, how are you doing today, my man? How are
I,
you?
I am blessed, Leland. I tried on some clothes that that I haven't really put on anything dressy in well over a year, only because of COVID, and you can't see below my. you know, but I'm not going to do anything obscene. But tried on some clothes, a pair of slacks last Saturday when we're going to go to my friend's son's funeral.
Yeah.
The waist was about 3 inches too large, and I was sagging and bagging without being in fashion. So that
Which
that that just told me that without major effort, I will reach my goal by the summer. Um, because my son is getting married. I don't. Did I tell you that?
Yes, sir. And hope and
Okay.
real quick, just so you know, we
Hmm.
are we are live. I want to make sure that I'm able to
Okay.
share the well
Okay.
only so real quick for anyone who's like, what's going on? So Hank has changed a few different things, and he's been really doing well health wise, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, looking younger and everything.
I I feel, Leland. I feel good. Um, and that's all. I stay in my lane, so to speak.
Okay.
Um, I think about going out and trying to jog again, but there are certain body parts don't work like they used to. So after we finish today, I'm going to go out. I'm going to rake leaves, blow leaves, mulch leaves. I'm going to do all of that other stuff after we finish today. So I try to stay active. And the other day, a neighbor saw me out there doing some stuff, and he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, I enjoy doing this, and this keeps me active. He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Because I thought you could afford to, have someone else do it." And last year I did have someone else to do it, but then I realized that I can afford to have someone do it or not have someone do it. When I can't do it, I call somebody.
Right,
Because my wife's expression is,
right.
"There's somebody for that." So anyway, I know that's a long story. So I just I feel good, and as you know, I just had a birthday, and I just try to take care of me without making it a lot of effort. I just try to do the right things, period, and that's where we are.
So we're talking about things, talking about staying healthy, talking about
Yes,
having
sir.
good maintenance on the body, and
Yes.
there's something also that we want to be aware of, and that's having good maintenance on the economy.
Hush now. I think that's
That's something
critical.
that's
Yeah,
critical, right? Because
that's critical.
that is ultimately what is bringing us where we are. So the
Yes,
thing
sir.
that I want everyone who's watching, paying attention, even SA who's paying attention right now, to be aware of is that we are at we're at a stand, we're at a point in life or in the economy where no one should expect for the government to ultimately provide for their every need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have been told that when quote unquote retirement was forced into 401ks and IRAs, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're being reminded of that as we look at inflation. The
Oh, wait a
truth
minute.
is, go ahead,
That's an
Hank.
ugly word. No, I'm just saying that's an ugly word. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to cut you off. Please, please.
No, no, no. Inflation. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring up, Hank, as far as you know of, is inflation something new?
No, we've always had inflation. In fact, let me shock some people. in 1983, I moved from Seattle, Washington, or no, Tacoma, Washington to Washington, D.C. And at the time, I bought my first home. I had rented apartments up until then. I was in the military, and I bought my first home. The interest rate to buy that house was 13.25%. And people have asked, why was it so high? That's what it was in early 1980s. And if you wanted to buy a house, you paid the cost to be the boss. So now inflation is, they're saying it's like 6.5%.
Yeah.
And I know it's higher than 2%, but 6.5%. Can I just put it down to its common denominator?
Please, let's talk about it.
6.5% in inflation rate or 6.5% interest rate is 6 cents on the dollar.
Okay, yeah, we agree. I hope we all agree.
Now, I understand that there's some other confluences that happen, but I don't want people to get all upset about, it's 6 point something percent. And I look at it, Leland, in the sense that for every good or service or product we get, everyone who touches it, from the person who created it, made it, manufactured it, grew it, raised it, everybody in that supply chain, in that logistics chain, added a little bit extra.
Supposedly,
so that little bit
added
extra,
value.
right,
Mhm.
added value, and that little bit extra by everybody takes the overall inflation rate to 6.5%. But a dozen of eggs did not increase by 12 cents, or a pound of beef, or a pound of bacon, or what have you, or a pound of chicken didn't increase by 6 cents or 12 cents or 18 cents if it's $3 or $4. It might be more than that, depending on processes. It depends on transportation costs or logistics costs. It depends on storage costs, or marketing costs. So sure, we're all impacted in some way, but the people who have money don't even bat an eye at 6.5 cents on the dollar.
That's true.
Okay.
So there's things that I want to bring up with inflation, and I want
Okay.
people to understand. And I'm going to hit the buzzwords real quick. So in the news, people are talking about investing in what's considered to be real assets. Now, real assets, we've been talking about the importance of investing in real assets for a long time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that shouldn't be anything new if you guys know of us. We're always talking about investing in real assets. We always talk about using the RAM, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's important to know is if the consensus, or I think the stat I heard was 1 out of 4 people. 1 out of 4 people
Right.
are upset right now with inflation of housing, transportation, utilities, and a few other living expenses, food, right?
Yeah.
So
Stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I wanna bring this to the forefront. We understand that how inflation impacts the added quote unquote cost of something, which is basically being tied to the currency being worth less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That means the
Mm-hmm.
currency is worth less, therefore it takes more of a currency to get that basic need. Okay. If, and this is for argument's sake, okay? Because I know
Okay.
you and I see different with this. If we as individuals are upset with inflation, would we also be just as upset in the event, okay, that minimum wage was $15 an hour or $20 an hour?
You say,
Because
would we be as upset?
yes, and I'll tell you, and I'm almost finished. I'm almost
Mm-hmm.
about to, I guess, rest my case. Because if we
Okay.
agree that with inflation increasing, an example of someone making a widget, let's not even say a widget, let's say someone making a cell phone, right? I have a cell phone here. You make a cell phone and you have to pay for the hands, the transportation, and all that's involved with the making of that cell phone, right?
Yes. Right.
Well, if minimum wage is $15 an hour,
Uh-huh.
the cost of that cell phone is going to also increase, and it's going to increase a lot quicker and higher than what inflation is doing right now. So therefore, my question to the audience is this: if you are, or if the general public is upset with inflation, therefore the price of things going up, which by the way, we've always had inflation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Will you be just as upset if the minimum wage was $15 or $20 an hour? That's what I want to know from the audience. And Hank, if you want to share your opinion, I welcome that as well.
I will try to be brief because I have a tendency to pontificate. The minimum wage has not increased since the early 90s or maybe early 2000s. And $7.35 minimum wage isn't squat. If it had kept up with the rate of inflation or with consumer price index CPI, it would be more than 735. So everything else is going up around wages, particularly minimum wages. The uber wealthy is making billions and paying very little taxes on the billions, yet people who work for minimum wage or low wage or making less than $15 an hour are the ones, for the most part, the ones that are struggling. So my short answer is I believe that there's this thing that we've heard about called a minimum livable wage. And I think people should have a minimum livable wage. And the federal government should not be the one to fix that. Um, the you you cannot buy or rent a place, an apartment in Indianapolis, Indiana, making $7.35 an hour for a 40-hour week. You just can't. You will be homeless. So my point is that I think that as a society we have to find a way to level the playing field as much as possible without handicapping people.
Hmm.
But you and I, Leland, have had this discussion before. There are some people who are unable to work. And years ago, when I came along, many of the churches, many of the congregations, okay, or the church took care of the congregation in many ways, and people shared a lot of stuff. The pastor, when I was coming along, the pastor and his family came to our house, my parents' house, almost every Sunday after church. And they went to somebody else on Saturday and they went to somebody else on Monday or what have you. So that's a way that we were able to start to help to take care of the sheriff, I mean the pastor. So I think minimum wage should increase. I think, unfortunately, the whole idea of inflation and wages is too political for me. And I think if we just back away, and I started to say let common sense prevail, but common sense ain't common. I think we just need to be able to stop trying to figure out how do we disenfranchise the other party or the other individual, um, of who's in power, and just do what's best for the people. Because
Hmm.
I hear people in DC talk about my constituents. And Indiana is a red state. And I hear these guys talk about their constituents. That's what they say, but I don't feel that what they say represents how I feel. And maybe it
Okay.
shouldn't. And I'm going to leave it at that.
You can leave it at that.
Unless you got questions.
No, I mean, well, so part of what we're saying here
Mm-hmm.
is when we talk about inflation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all know that inflation is here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm 100% sure that inflation has always been here,
Right.
right?
It's going to
I
stay
think,
here.
and it's going to. Thank you, Hank. It's going to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
So if inflation has always been here, and if inflation is going to stay here,
Mm-hmm.
why is it that people still don't invest to outpace inflation?
Well, some can't. They don't make enough to invest. Okay.
Okay.
So if one out of four isn't able to, then how does someone making $20 an hour be able to do that when we talked last week about if you make 100 grand, about 50 grand or say 40 grand is going towards taxes. And then
Okay.
if you try to set aside savings of X amount and tithing of X amount, and you're paying for a mortgage or rent, and you're paying for a house, and you're paying for all of these things, eventually you run out of money. And that's why credit card debt is over $7,000 per individual in the United States.
Okay.
So I just look at it in the sense that I know that it's not one size fits all, Leland, and people that are hearing what we're saying. But I would just say, I want you to, wherever you are in life, I want you to back away from the table and look at it in the sense that you're making between 8 to 10 dollars per hour doing what you're doing now. How do you feel?
So so something I want to say though is I do believe if someone is earning $10 an hour or $20 an hour, I do believe that someone
Mhm.
can invest. I do believe that.
Yeah, I believe they can, but you can't buy a share of Google. You can't buy a share of Facebook. You can't buy a bit. There are certain things that you can't invest in. So then the question is, how do we incentivize people, or we educate them enough that they should invest? Because companies have um, retirement plans for people or 401k plans for people, but a lot of people don't take advantage of it because they can't afford to.
Yeah, but so okay, we're talking about inflation. We're
Hmm.
talking about investing,
Hmm.
and I don't know if anyone has watched the news, have heard the news, or whatever else. But if you listen closely, as people are complaining about it about inflation, they're telling people, hey, don't worry, as long as you're able to invest in alternative assets and
Hmm.
quote unquote real assets.
Okay.
So if that's the case, a real asset is not the stock market or let alone any shares of Google or Facebook or anything like that. And
Hmm.
that's why I made the comment of anyone can invest. The question becomes, do you want to invest time or do you
Ah,
want to invest money?
or
Because if
both.
you're if you're able bodied,
Hmm.
if you have the general luxuries of the typical American, not saying that everyone has these things, but
Hmm.
general luxuries include internet. I believe general luxuries are internet,
Hmm.
phone, computer.
Uh, yeah, the latest phone.
All right, so we'll say the latest phone. Then I believe
Hmm.
those are luxuries. If you have those, and if you are
Hmm.
willing and able to, you can still
Uh-huh.
invest. Now you may not have $800,000 to that in the next startup. But if you have a phone, if you have a computer, and
Hmm.
if you are willing and able, you can do it.
Okay, I agree. I agree that there are possibilities for people out there, Leland. I agree. They gotta, a person has to wanna. I say you gotta wanna to change things, because you talk about when you lost your job and where you were with no income. and and your credit score in the toilet, and look at you today, I don't know, 8 years later or something.
Well, and so here's the thing. I'm not saying those things to say like, hey, look what I've done. I'll take myself completely out of it.
Hmm.
What,
Hmm.
what I will say, what I will say is there are opportunities. So inflation's here. You know that you should invest into alternative assets. For whatever
Hmm.
reason, you haven't invested in alternative assets to this point. You know that you should invest in what's considered to be real assets.
Ah,
So
real assets.
so
Can
yeah,
we talk?
let's
Yeah,
let's
yeah, yeah,
let's give an instruction. Okay.
yeah.
So for those who don't know, this is Google. Everything that I'm going to put into Google that you can see on my screen, I have not made this up. This is
Mm-hmm.
and this was invented before I was alive. All right. But you can honestly just type in what is or what are real assets. And you know what's so funny to me, Hank, is this: people want to act so innocent and unknowing, and oh my gosh, I had no idea. You know what? You had an idea because you played Monopoly before,
Mm-hmm.
or at least you know of Monopoly. You
Mm-hmm.
know, real assets are actually defined. Here, I'll read it. I'll just read it. I'll just read it.
Mm-hmm.
It says real assets is a investment asset class that covers investments in physical assets such as real estate, energy, infrastructure. Real assets have a inherent physical worth. Real assets differ from financial assets, which you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about as far as stocks and bonds, in
Mm-hmm.
that financial assets get their value from a contractual right or agreement and are typically intangible. So if I'm trading a stock or a bond, that's a right, a contractual agreement. Its real value is actually based on a real asset. The
Mm.
stock itself actually has no value because it has to be based off of a real asset. That real asset, and many times, is therefore the company, right?
Uh-huh.
So if anyone remembers looking at a Monopoly board, if you played Monopoly, Monopoly told you the map to the game plan. If I type in Monopoly board and we look at a Monopoly board right here, I'll go to images and I'm just going to click on a Monopoly board. Once again, I didn't make any of this stuff up. It's been in people's faces the entire time. So
That's it.
there's really no excuse. The Monopoly board, I'm gonna click on this one. We're
Ah.
taking to eBay. If you notice on Monopoly board, they give you the opportunity to invest in things, but it's things such as railroads, things such as utilities,
Mm-hmm.
things such as real estate, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? That's the definition of real assets. Real assets include utilities, they include infrastructure, they include telecommunications, they include real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Well,
they're telling you to hedge against um, inflation, it says it right here. It says real assets is an alternative class such as real estate, energy, and infrastructure. That's the Monopoly board game.
Leland, you said something about hedge, and a lot of people, they don't even know what hedge is. They think it's a bush out front. And I did a little research in the question I asked was, is real estate a hedge against inflation? That was the question that I asked Google. And you know what Google told me, if you trust Google,
If you trust Google, what
that it is.
what did that oracle say? What,
That
what did that oracle say?
it says, let's see. He says, why is inflation such concern, and how you can protect yourself against its negative effects. And it talks about investing in real estate. Okay. And what they did was, if during inflation to build the house, it costs more for the materials, right?
Yeah,
So you may have to pay a higher interest rate to get the mortgage. So then your house comes in at say 300,000 or 100,000. Let's go 100,000. Okay? For everything it's 100,000 you pay the mortgage on it. So now you're living in it's now in inflationary tendency. I mean, you're in inflationary period. If you decide to sell the house, someone is going to pay you more for the house than you paid for it, called appreciated value. They may have to pay a higher interest rate, okay? But you personally were not negatively impacted or affected by an increased inflation rate. Okay, or if things go up and down, if you stay pat, so to speak, your the value of your home, if it dips a little bit, it's going to recover, because if you take a look at how much homes have appreciated, or the value or the cost of homes have increased over the last year, I think I've seen somewhere around anywhere from 9 to 12%, and maybe higher depending on where you are. So if you had a house for 100,000 and you sold it, you could sell it for 109 or 112,000, or even more because of the appreciated value. So again, that bottom line, real estate is a good hedge, and that is one of those real fixed assets that you were talking about. So then, Leland, people want to know, well, how can I be able to do X, Y, Z to be able to afford some of the hard assets?
Yeah.
I
So,
think. Go ahead.
and I want to add something to this too, because I almost feel like someone's going to say, well, how the hell am I supposed to buy a utility? So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be you owning the utility company, right? I know in Indianapolis, at least at one point, the utility companies were owned by supposedly public trust, right? So
Mm-hmm.
supposedly no one person was supposed to own them. However, what they're speaking more in reference to is still based in real estate, and I'll tell you why. It means that you may own a plot of land. It could be called a parcel of land. All right, that's a lot. And Verizon may approach you and say, "Hey, you know what? We're looking to place cell towers throughout your neighborhood, and we feel as though that since you have no structure on your plot of land, on your parcel of land, that we would
Mm-hmm.
like to go ahead and place our utility there, our utility pole or whatever there, so that we can pay you rent." Right? It's still the same process, though. That's still the
Right.
same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, so you have utilities, you have transportation, and so forth. It's still gonna be based off of a physical, tangible asset, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to buy a utility company. Could it be someone choosing to invest in stocks and buying utilities through the stock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Mutual
Invest
funds.
mutual funds. All right, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just understand your return is going to be adjusted based on how much someone else has to be
Mm-hmm.
involved, right? So, but right now, Hank, in the moment, I was talking earlier this week with a person who has built a Airbnb portfolio just by calling people who have their properties for rent, signing a
Mm.
lease with these individuals. They will add furniture to the property, and then they list that same property on Airbnb.
Wow.
So
Now, see, that's being creative.
that's, come on now, because
That's.
because either you're going to invest time or you're going to invest money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here this guy is with 10 different Airbnb listings, and he doesn't own one piece of physical real estate.
Leland,
That's pretty cool.
um, I think that too often people are reluctant to change, or afraid to change, or afraid to bet on themselves. And we talked about that a little bit last week about this whole idea of fear. And sometimes it's easier to complain and blame somebody than to strap up, strap on, pull them up, and decide that I'm going to fix my current situation because it's my situation, it's nobody else's situation. So I don't know how to get people to change their thought process. I don't know I don't know how. But I think I told you some time ago that my family was in crises because we could rarely find a nanny or someone to take care of the kids, and the daycares were just amazing. My son, 3 4 years old, came home every day with scratches and and bleeding from something because he was getting into altercations in a church daycare.
Yeah.
And I decided, well, God told me, leave corporate America and take care of your family. And I've said, people thought I was crazy. But I tell people, you gotta, at some point in time, you have to be willing to bite the bullet. You have to be willing to turn around. And the example I use about the whole idea of turning around is putting in GPS. You put in a destination, and that GPS is talking to you constantly saying, hey, listen, you need to make a turn up here and if you're going in the wrong direction at the first opportunity, it may not say, um, turn around. It may say make a left turn or make a right turn or make a right turn. It might do that, or it will say recalibrating. So if people are not willing to take full responsibility for their actions, which impact their family, then the thing that they will do on Friday afternoons is go to a place that sell lottery tickets, and they'll spend $20, $30 buying lottery tickets, hoping that they'll get lucky.
I think it's called magical thinking.
But it's flawed. And I told you, you know, when Powerball or Mega gets to be 300 million dollars, I buy one ticket. Now, I know the odds are still 265 million to one. Okay, no ticket is absolute. A ticket, $2, is a possibility. Now, do you think I'm checking the numbers on Friday night or Saturday night on whether or not I hit the lottery or not?
You might have to buy a lot more tickets.
I don't. I mean, I bought a ticket. I never looked. I knew somebody in some other state won. So dude, I'm laughing, but we're talking about serious topics today.
We're talking about people's lives. I mean, Hank, you mentioned the GPS,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And it's
Hmm.
telling you to make a turn, make a left turn, right? Those kind
Hmm.
of things. And there are a lot of people that when they hear the GPS, or not even they hear the GPS. Let's just say this: there are a lot of people that when they get the opportunity, they say that the GPS is broken, metaphorically.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm gonna give this example. This is something that where I was talking to Art and Felisa about a couple weeks ago, which was there was this guy who I'm going to say lived in New Orleans. All right,
Hmm.
he owned his own property, and there was this crazy hurricane coming. And for about 2 or 3 weeks, people were saying, "Hey man, this hurricane's coming. Be careful.
Hmm.
All right, be careful. Don't if anything, prepare now for this hurricane." Now, of course, every time that people began to talk about this hurricane, the weather was beautiful. And so the man says, "Hey, I have nothing to worry about. You
Yep.
know, I'm not concerned about a hurricane. All right, everything's fine."
Hmm.
So 3 weeks go by, no hurricane. A month goes by, no hurricane. 2 months go by, this crazy massive hurricane hits his area, and it was having such a crazy flash flood that he sat on his porch, and he sat on his porch until the flood started to get to his knees. So he
Mm.
ran inside. As he's inside looking out of the window, this guy on this souped out Jeep rolls by, honks the horn, and says, "Hey man, hop on out and jump in." And the guy says, No, it's okay. I've already prayed to God about it. God will take care of me. He said, all right. By this time, time goes by, and by this time, the flood is so high that he has to go to his second floor. He opens up the window on the second floor, and this gentleman on a motorboat comes by and says, "Hey man, I see you up there. Come on down and hop in. I'll take you to safety." He says, "Oh, it's okay. I'm good. God will take care of me." Finally, this man is on his roof, surrounded by water, and this helicopter comes by, and this guy yells down his little bullhorn, "Hey, you down there! We're gonna send a rope down to help you out. Come on board." The guy says, "It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm fine. God's gonna save me." The man dies. He's in heaven, and he says to God, "I was praying. I was waiting. I was hoping. Why didn't you save me?" And what did God say, Hank?
He said, I sent somebody in a Jeep, I sent somebody in a boat, and I sent a helicopter.
Send a helicopter.
But finish your story, Leland, because that just gave me it just prompted something.
Because here's the message. A lot of you guys are looking for opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
This is your opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of you guys are looking for the right time to start investing. You're looking for the right things to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
You've been told for months on end, years on end, to look at alternative investing. A lot of you guys have been told on what not to invest in. You've heard people talk about the stock market crashing multiple times. You've heard people talk about inflation multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, metaphorically, you're saying, "I think the GPS is broken." This is your opportunity to change, to do something different. You have the entire country complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you guys brag about playing Monopoly or even playing spades with friends, right? And missing the entire business correlation there. Never seeing it for what it's really meant to be. Missing it.
Leland, you make some rather profound statements there, and let me see if I can add to them a couple caveats to something, only because I could write a book. There are a lot of people who suffer from something called the shiny object syndrome. That if it doesn't look a certain way, it doesn't taste a certain way, it doesn't smell a certain way, it can't be good for them. Then they are constantly relying on other people's opinions on what's good, bad. And I tell people all the time, if if you I'm going to use you. If you think Leland's opinions and ideas are worthy of note, go see where he lives. See what he drives. Okay? And and what we'll find is there are times that people will give advice or opinions on something, and folk will believe them and stay rooted in discomfort, frustration, and an attitude of lack or want. And then you were talking earlier about the ability to invest. Many companies, I think the law says that as an employer, if you have a minimum of X number of employees, you're required to offer a 401k plan or some type of retirement plan.
Right.
And I don't know the statistics, but what I have found is a lot, and the company matches up to, maybe they match it up to 5%. And there are people whose company has a plan and they've been working at that company for 15 years and have not invested one dime in their own retirement. Okay. And I don't know what they're waiting for,
They
because
think
so, I'm sorry.
they think that there's something better out there,
Yeah, right. Fear of missing out. Yeah, yeah.
but there's not. So, and Hank, you and I laugh about this a lot. Um, there's never something better. There's never something better. What always happens is, as you start the journey,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to adjust or add
Mm-hmm.
something better to your journey.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not starting your journey, there's never going to be a better vehicle that comes to you. You have to start your journey.
That that that's interesting that you say that, because again, like I said, let's pretend you don't have a car, but you have to go somewhere, so you start to walk, and someone stops to offer you a ride because it's just pouring down rain. Do you care what that vehicle looks like that's offering to pick you up and take you to a destination?
Not this bald head.
But you and I know people who have to own the best car. They have to have the best. They buy non-appreciating stuff every week or every month. They got to buy a new suit or a new coat or a new tie or new shoes or new something all the time, just to keep up with the Joneses. Okay? And I don't know how to get people to change the mindset, because we talked about mindset last week, or some other point in time. And I think I mentioned to you, I because of COVID, I think I might put 100 miles a month on my car, maybe 200. That's all. And my wife was saying, "Hey, baby, what? Why don't we get another car?" So I said, "Okay, fine. We'll go out and we'll look." And the dealers were determined that I was not leaving the dealership without signing a contract on something. Now I'm not trying to be unkind. I will just say that the cars that we were looking at cost more than 50 grand. Can I afford to get that car? Answer is yes. Let me help you on that. A car was 80 grand. Do you think I can afford to get a car for 80 grand? The answer is
Sure.
yes. But if I got the car, if I paid cash for it, that is a depreciating what, Leland?
If you call it an asset, right?
Well, but people think it's an asset. So I drive it off the lot, and almost immediately has dropped 20% in value.
never comes back.
Never comes back. Now, if I bought it and I'm driving less than 300, I mean, I'm driving, say, 200 miles a month, do I really need the car? No, I don't need the car. I can call Uber and get to the airport for, depending on if I want to wait or if I want to go right now, anywhere from 19 to 60 bucks. My car, if I drive it and I'm gone for a week, now I have to pay parking fees. So people don't look at the options that they have before them, or whether or not they need or want. What are your needs and what are your wants? If I needed a car, I would buy a car. I want a car, but I don't need a car. So I think people get confused as to needs and wants and or other people's opinions. Now let me ask you a question. Did you think of me over the weekend?
Yeah, I did.
Do you, I mean, do you think about me every day?
Just about every other day.
Okay. My point is, most people don't think about other folk at all. There are those of you who are listening who have you what you call good friends, and you have not called them in the last 2 weeks. And you may not have thought about them recently until I mentioned that you have a good friend, and you go like, "Oh, there's Leland. Oh, I haven't talked to Leland in a long time. It's been 6 months." My point is that even though we know folk, we have friends and all this other stuff, we don't think about them. And if we don't think about them, do you think they think about us? No, they don't. So I would just say, get your head out of your cavity and decide that you're going to make a change in your life. And if you've got a daughter, if you're a man and you got a daughter, she's looking at you because she's going to marry somebody probably just like her dad. Or if you've got a son and he's looking at, and you're female, and your son is looking at you, he's looking at somebody just like mom. And you need to start asking yourself a question now. Do you want your son or your daughter to marry somebody like you? Because I have learned over the years that birds of a feather damn sure flock together.
Hmm.
And if you think you're all of that, ask your kids what do they really think of you. Don't ask your friends. Ask your kids.
Hmm.
And if you can stand the truth, then I say good on you. So we're talking about inflation in real estate, Leland, because again, it comes back. They say, well, what does all of this have to do with inflation? It has everything to do with inflation because if you don't have the resources, you can't do anything. And the only thing I think we're trying to get you to see is that in spite of the 6.2% rate of inflation for the last month,
Yeah.
it's anticipated that it'll come back down to about 2.22% or 3%. And I said, that's nothing. It's going to be around. And in the early 80s, I paid 13.25% mortgage rate for a house. Okay.
It's going to be here. It's going to stay.
Okay. And it was a new house, 4 bedroom, 2 car garage with a full basement.
It's going to stay.
It's going to stay. Not it's coming back. It's going to stay. You just got to decide that it's worth it for you. That there's something out there that's meaningful enough for you to start betting on you. Now, if you need some help, there's some good news on the horizon. Aside from the fact that the inflation rate is going to go down, there's good news on the horizon. In spite of the fact that the economy in China is tanking and it will have some impact on us, there's good news on the horizon that in spite of COVID and all that it's doing, there are drugs being manufactured to help you. I don't care whether you're a vaxxer or not a vaxxer. There are people around you who are being vaxxed. Okay. And then there are a lot of things going on that we could say, well, I'm not going to do that because. Change that mindset and say, I'm going to do that because. So then we, Lee-Chandler Enterprises, can help you. We can help you with baby steps. We can help you with giant steps. But the point is, you have to be willing to pick up a foot. And I don't care whether you step backwards or step sideways or step forward. But the point is, to get from where you are to where you want to be, you got to be stepping. And we say, come step with us. Do we have all of the solutions? No, but we know enough to help you to start to get rolling. Thank you, Otis. You know, I'm sorry, people. You may conceive things, but I'm saying, I'm saying, I left corporate America as a corporate exec without a job. Just left. God said resign, I resigned. And as I've said to Leland, my wife and I were able to put my son through a private school costing more than $50,000 a year, and he came out of school with no debt, and we didn't have any debt for sending him there. After we got him out of school, God said it's time for you to relocate. So Leland, you've been to my house. It's not the best house in the world, but I think it's a pretty decent house.
I think it's a pretty large house too. Uh,
Well, and now people say, well, wait a minute, how does this guy, he's out here bragging and boasting? No, 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 it's decisions, people. And then you got to find someone to hitch your wagon to.
you have to, you have to. Too many people are trying to do things alone or by themselves. And what I wanted to say about that example when I mentioned if you played Monopoly and if you have played Spades or any other game where you had a partner,
Hmm.
what allows you to win that game is teamwork and having a partner. That makes it fun, and that's what
Hmm.
allows you to beat your opponent or opponents, right?
Hmm.
But a lot of people are trying to do things alone, and sadly, you guys are doing things. You're just doing the wrong stuff. It's just it's just
And you keep doing the
we keep
wrong
doing
stuff.
the wrong
If you
stuff.
always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. And if you want something different, you have to be willing to change. Yeah, and Leland, you were talking about playing sports and stuff. Everybody wants to play on the best team with the best players, and even those teams lose sometimes. I would rather play with just a group of people whose heads are on straight, who enjoy playing the game, who enjoy getting a little bit of exercise, who enjoy enhancing their skill set. That's who I want to play with. I don't want to play with someone who's boastful all the time, who's a ball hog. Okay.
That's right. I hear you, LeBron James. I hear you. I hear you. So with that being said, guys, here's what we're gonna say. If you have not already, go to salary2freedom.com. That is salary SALARY. The thing you get paid. To the number two, freedom.com. Salary2freedom.com.
Hmm.
Hank and I also have some great bonuses for you guys as well. This is a great way for us to really help you guys out. Join the email list there. Watch the video. Get educated, and join the community. You can also by joining that, you'll get an opportunity to join the Asset Builders Club as well, and
Hmm.
also the private Facebook group that we have. So, Hank, anything you want to say to the listeners as we wrap up?
I, I want people to not think that we're trying to entertain you, that we bring different perspectives to this platform. And we're trying to give different ideas, different little nuggets, different observations, different suggestions, so that at some point you will say, I can do that, or I will do that. Because as Yoda told Skywalker, do, do not, there's no try. So if you decided that you're going to do something, don't be afraid because there's a setback. A setback is a setup for a rebound because you will learn a little bit more. You will surround yourself with some people who are better able to help you. And it does not take a boatload of cash to get from where you are to where you want to be. It just takes a desire, a determination, a mindset, and the willingness to allow someone else to help you. And that's all I have to say.
All right. We'll catch you guys on the next one. And if you guys are getting some of the emails, just respond back and let us know what you found to be helpful, inspiring, or also hilarious.
Oh, if you think we are full of crap, tell us.
Ah,
Yeah,
that works too.
absolutely.